See that you're born an Italian if you want your life to be great. See that you're born an Italiano and your life will be great.
How about some Capuzzelle?
That's a nice.
Hey there, Paisani, and welcome back to another episode of the Italian American Podcast. I'm John Viola, along with my partner in crime, the notorious P.O.B., the Italian American Wikipedia himself, Mr. Patrick O'Boyle. We are here at the corner of Mulberry and Grand, the crossroads of Italian America, the heart of Little Italy, Red Sauce Studio, coming to you with another week of Italian American heritage, history, and hilarity that is the Italian American Podcast. Thanks for listening and watching now on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Please subscribe, give us a like, give us some comments, help us spread the word about this great project. We are fresh off the heels. I may sound a little nasally because I got a little cold this weekend while we were up in the mountain air. We are fresh off the heels.
Did you really?
I did. I got a cold, yeah.
That air's supposed to be celebratory? What's the word?
Whatever.
Salutary?
No, I don't know what it was. It was
Salubrious.
salubrious. It was chilly.
They were all the SAT words. They
Yeah,
don't the SAT
I didn't get that one. It didn't come in my word of the day email, but
Can I jump to the chase?
yeah,
We were at the Villa Roma eating Capuzzelle.
yeah, we went.
I love Capuzzelle.
We were the first people to have Capuzzelle in Villa Roma in what 4 years? They said 3 or 4 years.
You don't love Capuzzelle the way I love Capuzzelle.
I don't love any food the way you love
won't
food.
eat the brain.
I hate the brain.
Yeah, but you're like picky. Your father-in-law's got you paranoid.
My
on the
father's
brain.
got me very anxious about brain eating with the health benefits.
You have to have a
or
brain,
lack.
but if you have a really good lamb, I guess. But
Yeah.
I can anyway. You mush it up.
Oh, it's delicious.
With the breadcrumbs.
We went up there. We filmed. You guys are going to see the product of that in some of the postcards, POB postcards episodes. One of which will be this Capuzzelle making. We had a great time as Italian American weekend, but we did request
Villa
Capuzzelle.
Roma-
They used to do it.
Yeah, the Villa Roma, for those who don't know, is a resort, an Italian American resort in the Catskills. There used to be a number of them. Now it's the last
The
one.
last one.
And Thursday night, Caesar's night, when I would go up there as a kid, they would bring Capuzzelle out.
Every table, hundreds of tables.
They would offer. Not everybody ate it.
Right.
It was a limited amount of participants.
Yeah.
But that's a childhood memory of mine is Capuzzelle.
For those who are unaware, maybe your family lost this tradition. It's a sheep's head.
And not everybody did it. I mean,
Sure,
if you
yeah.
weren't in a town, if you weren't a sheep herder or a goat herder,
You didn't have them.
if you were in that business.
Yeah.
But the best part is the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
I love those breadcrumbs.
Yeah, that was it was good. It was really. I mean, I've had it a couple times. This was well done.
I like the breadcrumbs actually better than the meat itself almost.
Sure, the breadcrumbs taking all that
Oh.
meaty, gamey. But the great thing was, we go up. Brings me to today's topic actually. So they agreed to do this, right? Because they haven't done it all these years. We called ahead. We said, look, if we can source the Capuzzelle, will you do this with us? They said, sure. You know, some of the chefs still remember. So I called
They only stopped because of COVID.
because of COVID.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't
Oh,
like,
really?
and they still
Yeah.
have demand. There's still people calling up saying, "Where's my Capuzzelle?"
Oh, people were obviously jealous when it came out to our table. There's a lot of people who, long-time families that have been there, were staring daggers at our sheep's head. But I called Peter's Meat Market in the Arthur Avenue Market because that's where I went to college. I lived there for a long time, Fordham University and Arthur Avenue and Belmont of the Bronx. And they said to us, which was interesting, they said, no, we have some fresh ones. You don't have to reserve it. It's, it's going to be here. We got a couple. Just come by tomorrow. I thought this was going to be like a very expensive delicacy that people aren't buying. It was $6 for
You could feed. Think about this in hard economic times.
Yeah.
And your kids will have fun. Tell your kids you're eating lamb's head,
Yeah.
goat head, depending on what's in the market,
Yeah.
and you could feed your family.
Yeah, you can definitely
For
see why.
pennies on the dollar.
You could see why, if it was always that cheap comparatively, especially in these times, you could see why it was such a treat for families back
There's a lot
in
of
the
meat
day.
on a sheep's head.
It's a lot of meat on a sheep's head, yeah.
There was a tripe man in Jersey City that would go around downtown Jersey City, I guess up into the Kennedy administration, but I know well into the 60s, who sold Capuzzelle and tripe on a Saturday. That was like a big Saturday night.
Cooked or
No, on the truck, and you'd go down and get it and cook
get
it.
yeah.
So, like, the housewives would run down and get Capuzzelle and tripe on a Saturday night.
If long-term listeners know, Pat and I love this stuff, and we.
I really do love it.
Yeah, we do.
I love sinewy, fatty stuff.
Yeah,
no one makes tripe anymore.
Couple of restaurants. We eat a lot.
We are on the tripe. We should introduce our guests.
We're on. Yes, let's introduce our guests because
the voice is coming in.
I bring it up
is not seen
because the neighborhood, the Arthur Avenue Belmont neighborhood, is what ties together a lot of this because it's still where I go. I live in Westchester now, but it's still where I go, and I always have from the day I got to Fordham and discovered it. I've always gone back to Belmont for my cooking supplies, for my needs, because it really is, as much as I love our neighborhood here in Little Italy, Fordham, Arthur Avenue, Belmont still has everything in one spot. And one of the things one of the many things that it has that made it unique is the Belmont Italian American Playhouse. Also, the Enrico Fermi Library, the research library, the resources people don't think about. And today we have with us John Polinko, that's the Americanized pronunciation I asked before he came on, a playwright who did produce some of his plays there. And he's come on to talk to us a little bit about his career and what it means to produce for a community.
I just want to jump in. I am so excited about today, right? Your sister, Karen Rowder, is one of the first listeners I ever met. One of the first 3 or 4 that I ever met.
She's a religious follower of the Italian American podcast.
She's fantastic. She sent us, I have in the office, she sent us a whole packet of stuff about the Belmont Italian American Theater. But I had known her as a listener before I had known that you had a involvement in that. And I had said to John, the first meeting we had about the podcast, and we were doing a list of possible topics, Belmont Italian American Playhouse was on that list because I think that you guys did such tremendous work.
Well, I can't take credit for founding the Belmont Italian American Playhouse. Excuse me. But it was a very unique place to produce plays. And Dante Alberto was the guy who I think was the main mover of theater in this world. I mean, he was doing a play like La Mandragola by Niccolo Machiavelli.
Wow.
Right? He was doing that play in the Bronx in the early 90s. Who was producing that play? In Italian. I mean, it was really remarkable. Like a little renaissance on Arthur Avenue, right, near in that neighborhood. And one would never have thought that there was any theater at all going on in the Bronx. To this day, there's probably one active legitimate theater in the Bronx. I think it's Urban Stages, but I'm not sure. So having theater in the Bronx for neighborhood people was revolutionary. And in the 90s, when I stumbled upon the reality of the fact that people were doing theater in the Bronx, right? It's amazing.
And Italian-American theater.
Yeah. And who knew, right? Who knew? You don't hear a lot about Italian-American plays. I mean, you have great Italian playwrights like Luigi Pirandello. He's the master, right? You have Ugo Betti. Then you have Italian-American playwrights like no one talks about it anymore, like Albert Innamorato. And I'm trying to think of some more. Frank Pugliese, who's a great playwright. I'm racking my brains. There are not that many. They're out there, but people don't know them, right? So Dante, who was the artistic director at the time and producer, he was producing plays of all kinds, but he did focus on the Italian-American experience.
How did you find it?
I don't remember how I found it. It was in the early 90s. I think I just mailed him a script.
Did you grow up around the area?
I went to Fordham for a year and a half.
I
lived on Bathgate Avenue.
I did too. I lived on Bathgate.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, right off campus.
And then, so I knew Arthur Avenue because my family, I mostly grew up in Pelham.
Oh, so that's pretty close.
Like a mile from the number 5 Dyer Avenue train stop, right? So I knew Arthur Avenue because that's where we'd go to get groceries.
Yeah.
Like there was a time in really, I guess in the 60s and 70s, you couldn't really get decent coffee. You couldn't get decent bread.
Yeah.
You couldn't get decent stuff. Maybe some in Westchester, but we
really through the 80s even. I mean,
pastries. We'd go to Arthur Avenue.
Yeah.
My mother would go like once a week.
That's the big change for a lot of these neighborhoods. By the way, not to go totally tangential, but we were talking about this.
Us tangential?
I know, that's what we're here for. Our show is a show of tangents. I was talking about this as we were driving because Nikki came with me to pick up the head, and then we met Pat in the Catskills. And we were talking about Arthur Avenue, and I was saying it's interesting because nowadays there are first of all, it's changed fundamentally. I moved down there in 2002, so that's 22 years ago. The market was a different place. Still had a pot and pan man. It still had a seed guy. Now it's cafes, cigar rollers. None of that was there. It was really what it had been since like the 50s and 60s. It's a fundamentally different place, but it still draws people from that sort of Bronx Italian diaspora all through Westchester and Connecticut, Lower Connecticut.
Absolutely.
They come home to shop to get their pastries and things like that, their bread, and a lot of the stores throughout that diaspora are supplied by the bakers there, Terra Nova, whatever it is.
I mean, I had family in this neighborhood in Little Italy.
Yeah.
But we did most of our shopping up in the Bronx.
It still is. It's still a draw that way. But I think that's the big change for these neighborhoods is nowadays a lot of suburban enclaves or like I live in Eastchester, Tuckahoe. A lot of Italians there. We have a little bit of everything. So you don't really need to go to Arthur Ave unless you're looking for something like the Amoneca, the baking, ammonia or something like that. So I think that has been a big catalyst to change in these neighborhoods too, because now you really can be in that suburban diaspora of Italian American and get most stuff. You know what I mean? Or the internet. You could buy it on Amazon.
The one thing that they did that I think is so noteworthy is the fact that there were Italian American theater. It wasn't something that was new, right? And
For immigrants.
Right, for the immigrants, we had our own version of vaudeville, right, which was all down here in Manhattan. Emily's Alessandri wrote the book about it. I think I'm mispronouncing her name.
Yes.
The Italian American Immigrant Theater. We had comedy, we had tragedy, we had the rom-coms of that area. And that was one category. We had another category, the Sicilian puppetry, right? Which was a whole genre to itself. And then we had the religious plays, the opera sacra. So a lot of church groups would have the life of St. Francis or the life of St. Anthony. And even Madonna del Monte had a play written about her that was performed in New Jersey.
Really?
So, and especially during Lent, they were very popular. The same way they were in Europe in medieval times.
Right.
But what I loved about what you guys did, you had Italian American themes in your work, and you can have a bakery, you can have all the stuff and the butcher and the place that makes mozzarella, all those component stores in an Italian American neighborhood, right? And even the church and the social club. But how beautiful was it that the Bronx had a theater company?
Community.
Yeah.
Theater brings people together.
Yeah.
In the Godfather movies, Coppola does a whole thing about immigrant theater.
Yep.
And there are all these scenes of various characters.
That was his grandfather, his Domenico what's his last name?
Oh, I don't remember.
Coppola's grandfather.
Really?
Yes, that was Coppola's grandfather's work. That's where it comes from.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes, Senza Mama.
So he had
Mama.
theater in his blood.
Yeah, that was in
long
his
time
theater,
ago.
absolutely.
And then he went to, I think, Hofstra and did theater.
He did a CD maybe 10 or 15 years ago on the, I guess it would be called, we use the word sceneggiata in Abudan, the performed musical acts that his grandfather wrote, which Ernie Rossi, I think, actually dealt
manufactured
them. And the Senza Mama that's in, matter of fact, I saw that at the Newark, which there's another upcoming episode. The First Ward of Newark has an Italian American museum. I visited there, and they had, when they would go buy those, I don't know, what would you call them, John? When you buy the sheets of music, sheet music,
yeah.
sheet music of Francis Ford Coppola's grandfather's.
No kidding.
Senza Mama.
Did not know about his grandfather's heritage.
Yeah.
So it's a Neapolitan dramatic scene because the guy loses his mother and his girlfriend simultaneously.
They're melodramas.
Melodramas,
It's good
correctly.
beset by evil.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
Usually good prevails, usually, but not always.
What was it
and
like?
there's fatalistic perspective among the Italian American or the Italian immigrants because things, were tough. People didn't all make it. They didn't make it. Some went back. No one talks about
We
that.
had the largest, Hungarians and Italians had the largest rate of return.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think a lot of the men couldn't handle the change, which I understand,
And a lot of them, too, only came here to get money,
Yeah.
to go home and buy goats, buy a farm. Let me ask you a question. How was it working in a theater company where I guess the majority of the actors and the director and the like were Italian American? What kind of vibe did you guys have?
I don't think the majority were, but I think, maybe half and half. It was a real community experience. I mean, I sent this play, which I wrote in the early 90s, over here to the theater, and they produced the play. And it was like no other production I ever had of this play, which has been produced. It's called Over Here. It's a two-person play. It's been produced 5 or 6 times around New York. It's been produced in Missouri. Who knew? It's been produced in the former Soviet Union, in Russia. Who knew, right? There's something about it that people connected with. And it's 2 guys in church talking about stuff they're not supposed to be talking about in church. That's what it's about, right? And God is in it. Whether they are praying or not, God is hovering over the whole thing. Doing Italian American theater, was a different experience because I didn't have to explain anything to the guys who did the play and directed it. They knew these characters. They knew them from the neighborhood. They knew them from their families. That part of them might have been one of these guys, right? So there was an immediate connection. And that said, doing theater at this place in the Bronx, I've never seen audience participation like this before in my life. I mean, people were standing up and hooting, spinning around, and yelling at the stage. This is like
That is so funny.
This is like Shakespeare's Groundlings.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
true. Wow.
In 1602, interacting with the actors on stage during comedy or during a tragedy, right? I've never seen that before. I did a lot of plays in Manhattan. By no means a professional playwright, but I had a lot of stuff up in lower Manhattan and in Midtown over many years, starting in the early 90s till about, I had a couple in Jersey over the last few years. But a lot of plays produced, but audiences sit, behave, silent, watch. As opposed to the Belmont Italian American Theater, people were like in the aisles yelling stuff at the actors, and they were yelling back. It's a beautiful experience. Community.
Yeah.
Theater is connection. Like,
Of all the episodes we've done, all the work we put into this conversation right now is worth it all.
Yeah.
Because you know why I'm laughing, Homer? Because when I think it was Caruso, the San Carlo Opera House in Naples had the exact same reputation in Europe.
I love that.
Like they would get up and start yelling at them. Like, the guy's gonna come. He's behind the door. He's gonna murder you. Like people couldn't handle it because the Italian theaters, with the Neapolitan theaters, the people would start yelling at them.
But what did I say to you this weekend?
All that is fantastic.
We go
it's in the DNA.
We
you
go
can't
up
breathe it out
to
of people.
no, it's in the we
can't
go to
breathe
the
it out. You're
right.
Catskills.
You can't.
And we try to participate in everything they have for the Italian weekend, right? And film what we can. So one of the scheduled things is a cooking demonstration. It's the executive chef of the resort who'd been there for like 50 years. He just retired. And he comes back every year and he does a cooking demo. And the resort's got hundreds of rooms. And it was a little quiet off-season. So a lot of the events weren't well attended. This was packed, right? Every Italian person that was there, they took the time to go to this cooking demo. The guy came up. He was older. He said, listen, I'm going to do like 9 recipes in a half an hour, and I can do this if you stay quiet. That's all he asked for, right? He was really nice, great personality, right? He was a Hungarian-American chef who had cooked for Italians for 50 years. So
That's called trauma.
yeah, that's called trauma. Yeah,
That's trauma.
So he and I got there from separate places. So he was sitting across the room, and I texted him. I said, listen, you got to come sit next to me because the lady next to me is having a running conversation with the chef, and every time she speaks, she's slightly increasing her voice because she wants him to hear it. And sure enough, by the time you got up to come around, she was just interacting with him. And he had begged everybody, right? But everything he did, I get this there. You can get this in Italy. They don't sell this. Do you use this? And then the rest of the audience got inspired. The poor guy, he couldn't keep up, but they couldn't resist being a part of that
You
action.
don't put garlic in that. That's
Oh,
too
yeah.
many, but,
I mean, the guy could hear you.
Yeah.
It was a
all
running...
the world's a stage. Where's the boundary between the players
Italian people don't
and
have
the
it.
audience?
No boundary.
The boundary
That's so
is
true.
it's porous,
Yeah.
so to speak, right?
Porous.
So people cross that line, which is great. It's unusual.
The beauty of a community theater, 'cause, like this, I didn't think about this coming in before this, is everybody's involved. Like it's not the purview of the professional, right? Because so many Italian American parishes had theater companies, had theater troupes, right? Up until I'd say about the period before World War II. And I just thought to myself, I think I know what was the last Italian American theater production out of a parish. Holy Rosary in Jersey City in 1985 turned 100. And our late dear friend, Monsignor Ambrosio, he wrote a play called Accumata. It was a bilingual play. And he wrote, because he had grown up there and he had spent a lot of his life in the parish he wound up being a curate in, he wrote all the characters that everybody grew up with. And anybody knows an Italian neighborhood, there was always characters.
Oh yeah.
And I remember as a kid, actually, this is God's Honest Truth, John, going on the bus to Villa Roma, and them, because all the parishioners were the actors, them acting out the scenes on the bus and dying laughing.
I can only imagine.
And they were, and the Akumato, we still have, Eric has the actual, what do you call it? Not the script. The script.
The playbill?
He has the script, where it has all the lines, the script. He has the actual script of Akumata.
Oh, we should put it back on.
And Akumata was such a hit. There was an Akumata 2. They did a second thing.
And this was in the 80s?
85. They
Sounds
did
like
for the
it's
100th
something.
anniversary.
It sounds like it's something from the 50s.
Yeah.
I remember the funeral
kept
scene.
it going.
Oh, they kept it going. They had a funeral scene, I think, where the Kumata walks in. So the guy's Kumata walks in and his wife is in. It was like stuff in the neighborhood that all had happened to people, but they had them jumping on the kid. But what impressed me so much as a kid was they were like the Italian lady next door was an actress for a night. The whole parish participated.
That's community.
That's
But it also
community.
goes back to Commedia dell'arte, this
100%.
tradition of Italian theater that goes back to 700 years, 500 years, right? We had stock characters. You had the miser. You had the lecher. You had the hapless husband who's being cuckolded, right? And so you had all this family drama and neighborhood drama being reenacted on stage by people who knew those characters, who were those characters.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Gino Marcella has an actual video, a 1985 videotape of that play.
I'd love to see that.
We should get that.
I'd love to see the script.
Oh,
yeah, can we get that?
Gino, I think, has. I will get. This is now put the bee in my bonnet for this.
Yeah, you're making me think about this,
Yes.
right? Think about this. Like we try to do all this stuff in the community. I know there used to be, I think it was D'Amato Opera House or one of them was, right?
Over on near CBGB's.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, down another Bonanima, New York institution gone, but they were the last one I remember in the city. But
The family gave it up. I think they were just tired. I mean, I don't.
The guy
I don't
was like
remember
80,
when
90 years
They
old.
were
He
right
passed away.
next to CBGB's
Yeah.
on East 2nd
Yeah,
Street.
that's right.
Right on the Bowery near East
Bowery,
2nd Street.
right. But I always in the back of my head maintained as a young person, like, okay, that's there, right? So you could, but now for a guy like you, right? How do you fall into writing theater? And then what would you do if you had this script and you wrote something new?
Who knows?
Where do you go?
I mean, I had some plays produced in New Jersey. I don't really know. I mean, I don't have an agent, so I send stuff out. My wife's in the film industry, so sometimes through her we connect with somebody. But writing plays for me is an act of faith and imagination. I have to imagine that somebody actually wants to see the play, that it's entertaining, that it's funny, that it's interesting. So I have to kind of muster up this. It could be a hallucination that this thing can play, right? This thing could rock, and so that's how you write them. You have to believe that somehow, someday, somewhere, someone will produce it, and you have to imagine it happening. I'm working on a play now called Jersey Lightning, which takes place at a lighting emporium on Route 22 in New Jersey.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember Route 22.
I want to
fondly.
write I had an idea for another play called The Italians, which is about people who aren't really Italian, right? They've been either deracinated, like some Italian Americans who...
Great word.
They are not... they've been ethnically cleansed, so they're American, right?
Yeah.
This is what I don't care for that.
Whitewashed.
Changing names.
Yeah.
White bread wops. We didn't come
That's
up
the
with
new
that.
thing. Wonder bread wops. Somebody called
Wonder
it.
bread wops.
Somebody called it on the show the other day. I thought that was great.
Yeah, that's a term.
Why would you do that in any heritage that you have, unless you were afraid of being harmed by someone, like you're Jewish and you have to hide it?
Right, sure.
Right? But I don't understand assimilation is good in America to a point, I think. But people go completely vanilla,
Yeah.
right? I never really understood that. But that's a strain in Italian American culture. It's a thread in Italian American culture
Absolutely.
as well. You see it all
100%.
over.
You talk about that, and I don't know if she's written plays that she might have, but Maria Lorino. Do you know Maria Lorino?
No, the name sounds familiar.
She's a great author, and she grew up in Short Hills, New Jersey, which was a predominantly Jewish community, and it still, I think, is.
Yeah.
But she was from an Italian American family, and she wrote a book called "Were You Always an Italian?" And basically, it's one of my favorite books, and I've gotten to know Maria now through projects together and stuff. She's wonderful.
Oh, I have to check it out.
You got to read this book, and it's all about that struggle for her in this community, and she teaches through it. And I saw a lot of it growing up, an outsider as an Italian American in an predominantly Irish community. I related a lot to it, and it's sort of that idea of how do you hold on to this in certain circumstances, So it might be a great inspiration for what you're working on. And she's just a wonderful,
I'm going to check
lady.
it out. Well, the humor is something that is so prevalent in Italian culture.
Yeah.
And the kind of earthiness, the groundedness that you have about life, right? That's something I love about the culture.
It's Totò.
Yeah.
Like Totò is like the ironic. The Italian sense of humor really is personified.
And it's
like I'm against the world. It's Atlas climbing that mountain.
Yeah.
It's or Sisyphus rolling the rock up the mountain. But it's multifaceted and multi-layered, and it can be, intellectually complex as well.
Yeah.
But also there's that kind of core, the heart, the heart, the earthiness.
Yeah.
The kind of bawdy humor. This guy has a girlfriend, and the wife doesn't know about it, and all the situations of life, right?
I always say that. I think that that's the draw for us to do this project with the podcast and everything we do. And, how we get a lot of listeners that are far removed from their immigrant experience, maybe coming back, seeking an access point, a font of information around the heritage. And we get a lot of listeners who aren't Italian at all and just really relate to it. And people will say, why is that? Why is it that our culture, both in Italy and in the diaspora over 150 years, draws people in? And I think what I've settled on after 20-something years of being a professional Italian American is we're really good at the stuff that makes humans human. That, that the sanctity of family.
We excel at it.
We excel at that. Good, simple soul food that's not complicated and intimidating. The enjoyment of a homemade bottle of wine around the table, everything sort of presented simply. I think those things, we're empathetic, I think on the average as a people. And I think that humanness that you talk about makes characters relatable. I really believe that.
Yeah, I sometimes don't think of these things, but they pop up in life. My way home from work every day, I pass this intersection. There used to be a little stone to Christopher Columbus till about 2020. This is in West Orange, New Jersey. And then one day it was gone. I was like, really? Because, immigrants save their pennies to put that thing up.
Yeah.
And I know that, Indigenous Peoples Day is like the way things are going. Although, this is weird. They apparently did some kind of DNA test and discovered that Christopher Columbus was maybe Jewish.
Yes, he's a Sephardic Jew now. Yeah.
So does that change the conversation? I don't know.
A lot less pressure on us to worry about it.
I don't know if it changes the conversation. But driving by that blank spot where there was this little memorial that immigrants saved their pennies for, and the fact that it was just removed.
Well, that was my entire argument.
I was like, I'm Italian. This hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
Even though I understand the advocacy for indigenous people,
sure,
etc.
I get it. I've been on the front lines of this thing for a long time.
My entire argument with that was, if you just remove the Columbus argument, when you take that away, like the statue in Newark, the two statues in Newark, there was no compensation in the sense on the public square to say, okay, we know that these statues were put up as Italian Americans to try to get a piece of the action of the American presence, right?
Yeah.
We also have a part of America. You're here because Christopher Columbus came here and built the gateway, built the highway from Europe to the New World. And we are people of value because WASP society had put us in category of people of non-value. No one who tore those statues down said, we're going to take that statue down, but we're going to put something else up to commemorate you. Because we don't matter.
Yeah.
See, we don't matter to them.
But that's also our own fault.
We don't matter to them.
That's all. I mean,
100%.
not to go into the Columbus, conversation, but it's a good one, particularly on the heels of this year's Columbus Day. The day before was the results.
Why don't American public schools teach about the lynchings in New Orleans?
No one wants to talk about that.
Or the lynching in Tampa. Or the two guys who were lynched in Tampa.
I didn't know about Tampa, but the New Orleans thing was an outrage.
Yeah.
It was an abomination. And it's not taught because now Italian Americans are considered to be, quote, white. And they weren't at the time. So people have a different take on it now.
But I blame our community because when I was 28 and took the job as the president, or then I guess I was a COO at first, of the National Italian American Foundation, the year I got there, I started in February 2012, and by 2012 October, I think Seattle and Los Angeles had done away with Columbus Day, and we were going to have our gala weekend, and I said, naively, let's get all these stakeholders in a room at this big gala weekend from all age groups and all backgrounds, and let's talk about the issue behind closed doors as a community and try to come up with a policy. And we did it at a big open forum, and all we did was argue, which I should have foreseen. But I said, very honestly, listen, my take is in a community like Seattle, where we're a small population and Indigenous Americans are a significant population,
Sure, yeah.
we're going to lose that battle, right? So what we should be advocating is we can defend Columbus, we can do all the academic work. We got a 9-part series I think we did trying to dig as best we can objectively into the question. But if that's not going to work, and we're going to lose anyway, the battlefield we should be willing to die on is not Columbus, but whether this day remains Italian American or not. So I said, if a community is going to take Columbus away, and that's their prerogative, our backup should always be it should stay Italian American Heritage Day, some kind of secular Heritage Day.
Something.
And
Not being erased. Don't
not being
erase
erased.
it.
They're not gonna
Because that's a binary thing.
They're never
right.
ever
But
going to do that.
Many of
Never.
the community elders, I mean, they called me a race trader. Somebody said, and this comes back years later. We go to meetings now. I mean, you were with me not long ago, and I said something completely unrelated to this, just about being moderate. And somebody said to me, "You, Mr. Viola, we should remind everyone that you are a race trader,
Oh.
and you." And I'm like, "This is insane." So
Yeah, but can I come
we're
to that?
self-defeating.
I would never put that in your category. But I'm going to come into their defense into one sense.
Sure.
I think that there are still, especially amongst the older boomers, the sensitivity of discrimination, and they smell it,
Yeah.
right? You know, I met a guy in Rhode Island. I wished I remembered his name. This was like 15 years ago. And he graduated from Georgetown. This is like 1980, Georgetown Law. And he went for a job in Rhode Island. And I think he was from Providence. He went for a job in Providence. And he applied to a WASPy firm. And they came out and told him right off, we can't hire you because the people that hire us would never want somebody with your name working for them, right? So that existed, right? So I think that crowd, they didn't understand what you were saying, and they tuned out what you were saying. But I think a lot of it is their PTSD.
Yeah.
Because they know we've been played.
But listen, my
And
point.
not that I'm defending it.
No,
but
no,
I
no,
think-
you're not defending them.
But I bring that up too because the Gen Z people listening to this can't understand that.
Yeah.
There was within our lifetime.
Oh, I
a
got it. I
time-
dealt with
and
it
it's not
myself.
Right. But also I blame media because media portrayed us as buffoons and mafioso, right? But that's what I think the benefit, to circle back to what you guys did, right? You were able to portray Italian American life without Goomba Johnny or without the hitman or without the mafioso. That was the beauty, right? Because so many Italian American portrayals in media were coupled with gangsterism because that's what sold.
Yeah.
But the beauty of these plays, which were made by Italian Americans for Italian Americans, whether you could just sit back and relax and enjoy it without the bimbo character or without the hitman.
I had another play in this anthology called Macchinista, which is really about, which means like engineer and mechanic, kind of at the same time. And it's about trying to learn something from your uncle, from your grandfather, and not knowing the dialect they're speaking really, and figuring it out on your own and asking them questions. And the answers are very mysterious, and they're often in a dialect you don't understand. And so there's that journey of people of my generation trying to understand the people who were born in 1895 or 1905, who had born in Italy, completely different experience of America than I had. Yeah. And trying to understand the mysteries of life and death and love and everything. So I try to address that in that play. And it's over the process of trying to dismantle an engine, take apart an engine. We worked with our hands. That's what we did. That's what the people came over here worked with their hands, right?
When you write this stuff, are you doing it because, like, I can only relate it to what we do here. I often say this is as much a therapy couch for me as it is for a community service to have these conversations. What are you telling the story because it's your story? Or are you telling the story because you wanted in the in the memory? Are you telling it for the what inspires
Well,
it?
I tell it because in some way, it could be glancingly, it's my story.
Yeah.
Or it could be more directly my story. But also, I want to communicate something about the complexities of life. And I happen to be Italian American. So that's part of my perspective in the world. And I don't think there's enough of that out there. You know, as you said, there's plenty of the mobster stuff. But what about other aspects of this life? The internal lives of working class people.
Yeah.
You know, the people who, my extended family, right?
Yeah.
They had interesting internal lives, and they were hardworking people, and they succeeded as best they could in America. And that's another thing that's kind of been erased about not just Italian immigrant culture, but all immigrant culture. It just gets washed over, and it's strange. Maybe that's why there's so much anti-immigrant sentiment now, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
In a country that's made of immigrants.
I find it fascinating. I have this shut the door behind us syndrome that drives me crazy, and we are like apolitical on this show. I hope. I mean, I think those who've listened for a long time probably figure out where we sit. But the one issue that I am who I am on is immigration, and while I do think the system needs reformation and corrections, I think it's the fact that we somehow internalize this idea that immigrants came, they struggled, and then everything was great.
Yeah.
We just totally rose-colored the whole thing. I think it's a disservice to the country, because I think that understanding that struggle and understanding that struggle, how it impacts multiple generations. Like, I know I am doing this stuff because my family left a really, really Italian enclave in Brooklyn and went to a non-Italian place in New Jersey, and I had this internal immigrant experience is the best way I could describe it. I would not be doing this stuff for my career if I didn't have that. I know that. So, I'm the son of two people who were born in this country, but I had my own immigrant experience, and it deeply impacts me. And I think when we sort of say, like, immigrant came, they had it hard, and then everything was good, and we were all like, the rest of the country like pizza and Sinatra, I think we do a disservice to our community. You know?
It's more complex, Italian American culture.
Yeah.
Than that, right? And it's different than Italian culture.
So I'm gonna something to be learned from the new immigration. There's a lot of Peruvians by me.
Yeah.
Because we're neighbors in New Jersey,
yeah.
right? And it's so beautiful to see, like, concerts and musical performances and all the cultural stuff that I think we did up until the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I'm old enough that I remember, like, in Rutherford, in the William Carlos Williams Center in Rutherford, when that opened. That's by me in New Jersey, walking distance. I remember them. I remember my grandmother and my mother. I remember us going. They Rutherford Unico put on an Italian concert, right? And stuff like that happened more, right? Italian musicians or Italian American musicians. I'm a big, my love for the Bloomfield Mandolin Orchestra, right? I would take them everywhere with me.
They're all over the place.
They're all over the place.
Yeah.
And we love them because they do such a fantastic job.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
And it's so wonderful. Like, I wish to God that we would, and maybe if you're in an Italian community out there and you have a well-established Italian community and you're listening to this, that's something I would love to see us get back to, right? Because we have all these movie theaters that are unused, right? And the older they are, the more they're compatible to theater, because they were vaudeville, they used to do combos back in the day. Like, why are we allowing these movie theaters to rot away, right? When there's so much stuff we could do, because all these kids, my high school had such a strong high school musical program, right? And then they have nothing to do, right? Because they're not going to go on to Hollywood, a lot of them. They're not going to go on to Broadway. But they're still, I don't say amateur in a bad sense, amateur in the best sense of the word. You could be an accountant, a lawyer, a butcher, a baker, and still want to do community theater. And there's
amateur,
so many,
like the athletes in the Olympics are amateur,
sure,
right?
The same way, like, you're in a softball league, right? And I think there's and the thing is that the material's out there, right? The material's out there. But now with the internet and everything else, people rather be home on their couch, on their phone, than theater. So I would love to see a revival of Italian American theater. I hope there's one community out there.
How can we
who
encourage
takes
that?
this call.
I wonder if anyone, I'll ask my wife, who's, as I said, in film and television, is anyone going to ever make a movie about that immigrant theater, the way Coppola represented it in those movies? But that whole complex...
There's a Yiddish one in Manhattan. There's a Yiddish theater group in Manhattan that does because the Jewish Yiddish theater was like probably even bigger than
yeah, it
ours,
was.
right? And the problem is they have the same thing as us. They have a language barrier now, right? Because even there's so few people who understand Yiddish, right? Israel, it's not even a language. You know what I'm trying to say in the sense that, except you're in an Orthodox community who's not going to go to that kind of show.
Right.
They're the last Yiddish speakers. So we have all this Italian American material. I don't even know where it's kept. Is it in Minnesota? Is it at
Who knows?
What was the name of Minnesota where all that stuff was deposited?
Oh,
The University of Minnesota.
Yeah,
has a
it
huge
was
collection.
Oh, really? That's where it is?
the Center for Migration Studies. Maybe
They did a push. The University of Minnesota. What was his name? Not Randy. Rudy.
yes.
An academic at the University of Minnesota who's long gone. May he rest in peace. Did this push for anything Italian American. A receipt from a restaurant he collected, and he has this huge immigration compound, a storehouse of everything, from your organizational meeting minutes to the local Italian American newspaper. So I don't know. Do they have this? I know that I've seen a lot of posters. I know for the religious ones, I don't know where they are.
Yeah.
I think Monsignor Ambrosio and Eric might have some of those because they had the secular theater group, which wasn't secular, just wasn't religious based in the sense that, and then you had the miracle plays, right? The story of Bernadette Lourdes and stuff
Those
like that.
are those plays go back to the Middle Ages.
Yeah, and they went back, and Italians would go. There'd be like Sunday, and you'd see there's posters you could find, like I Miracoli di Sant'Antonio, Sunday 3 p.m. at such and such.
Wow.
And in the theater of in the basement of the church, and they were fundraisers. But there's all this stuff out there, and we know, number one, every Italian's an actor, every Neapolitan's an arch actor.
Yeah.
So it's not like the capacity is not in the DNA.
It begs an interesting question. Kind of, what can our audience do, right? How do we support theater, community theaters, particularly Italian American stuff?
Well, I specifically Italian American. There's not that much out there, but I would say support all community theater and get involved and hope for the best. Write a play, direct a play, produce a play, act in a play, right?
I wonder.
Lend your voice to the world. Give your voice a way to be heard.
Do you think that theater companies, from someone who's in the industry, would be receptive to like the Moonstruck type script, or
That was John
Mystic
Patrick Shanley.
Pizza? That's
John Patrick Shanley, who's half Italian. That was in the '80s. Moonstruck was probably the biggest thing he ever wrote, right? Although he wrote Italian American Reconciliation, he wrote a bunch of plays. He really knew that world. I don't know. I think maybe, I hate to say it, but sometimes I think maybe people aren't that interested in Italian American culture anymore, unless it's mobsters.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
And I don't know if that's on us for not reacting to that and superseding that perception or putting stuff out there. I'm not sure.
I think a lot of it had to do with the boomers' embarrassment. I
Yeah,
think we never
of being
talked about the
ethnic.
fact the
Yeah.
boomers didn't want to be ethnic, and I'm not going to go to that, But there has to be somebody out there. I love the fact that we have a program that's not just a program, but that's also an ongoing call to action.
Yes, that's
Right?
true.
That's the union leader. in
That's
me.
true. Yes,
that's
that's
John
the Irish
Clinton,
ward leader. Yep,
right?
that's true. Yeah, but I think that's. I always think about what can we do, right? Like, we don't say this often on the air because I don't know why we don't say these things on the air. We just were able to preserve a digital or not digital yet, digitizing an archive of 400 and something Italian American feast videos,
408
photos,
different feasts,
400 around the
hours,
country. Yeah,
the Paul Pacelli collection.
yeah, that Paul did over 40 years or whatever it is. We were able to raise the money, thanks to Brendan, to digitize that and make it available to people as a resource. But we love these kind of things, and sometimes I feel like we sit in the kind of driver's seat on it because a lot of the institutions in our community don't want to do this really granular stuff. Like, with all due respect to all of the institutions out there, all these organizations, a lot of times I feel like they would rather spend their resources and time talking about Dante and Machiavelli and Leonardo da Vinci than
Well, they deserve their place.
Yes.
But they don't want to talk about other stuff because
But-
they're afraid that the crown will fall off their head.
right.
They can't talk about.
But they don't want to talk about the immigrant theater and because it's maybe just not even the idea of shame, or it's just work.
It's also class.
Yeah,
Economic
I
class.
think it is. I think it's
Because
economic class.
There is this disparity between the Italians and the Italian Americans. I mean, there's
Oh, huge.
there's there's love there, and there's also some hostility.
But there's also the Lumanti hunters.
Yeah.
The people that they go apoplectic, like Lumanti, like they just because.
Oh, I got yelled
like,
at one time.
Why don't you have all Puccini all the time?
I will never forget. I was a 30-something, 31, 32. I was the president of the National Italian American Foundation, young guy, and as I was touring the country to interact with these institutions, a lot of people I think had this idea that I was going to be very sort of pro, like let's leave. Grandpa and the soffritto and the Capuzzelle in the closet, and let's go out and, we'll be these polished Italians. And I went to an institution in Chicago. I can admit now on the air I was hungover from going out with some of the Italian guys in Chicago the night before. I was really, really nauseous. 10 o'clock in the morning, they wanted to serve me a plate of pasta with ragu and peas. I don't know how I kept it all together. And I mentioned something about loving Lumanti and Peppino the Mouse. And this guy went off on me in this very.
And we do love this guy.
I don't. This guy, I don't know who he was.
Oh, because there's one guy I know.
There's a couple guys in Chicago.
There's a guy I know who has an anti-Lumanti thing.
Yeah,
but
a lot of people have anti. But he gave me. I mean, Dolores does this whole finger-wagging professorial parenting speech about you at your age need to be a role model for young Italian Americans, and you should be talking about opera. And I like opera. I like opera very much. But Lumanti.
There's a place for everything.
It's a place for everything.
Yeah, but there's that, it's also, immigrants are displaced people by choice, maybe, right? But they had to leave. They were starving. They came here and they were looked down upon by those who stayed. And I've seen that in my travels. And it's apparent, or if you meet someone from Italy who's here, New York, New Jersey, there is that tension. Some of it, I think, is perception of class. But look at Italy. It's a mess. They don't have a replacement birth rate.
No.
People stopped having kids. They've had I don't think I'm wrong to use the word extreme right-wing prime minister at this point, Meloni, right?
Yeah.
She's been there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
They have a strong anti-immigrant.
But just to jump in with that, though, to bounce the other side, Italy has in the last 20 years been a ship that has rocked economically.
Sure.
So now you have a lot of people trying to say, where are we going to be in 20 years, right? Who's going to stay? Like, there's a lot. I'm trying to say the Italian, all the questions that are coming in now in Italy. It's like getting older now. You're getting hit with all these diseases.
Yeah.
And it's easy to. I think it's easy. How do I want to say this? Italy's in a complicated. I don't envy them. We have our own complicated problems here.
Oh, yeah.
But Italy has a lot of complicated problems. Well, you talk about the birth displacement, right? There's going to be whole towns in Italy that are abandoned, ghost towns.
Yeah.
Towns that have been around. When Julius Caesar was in short pants, those people were in those towns. And now after 2,000 years, they're on the verge of extinction just because people had to leave because of work. People couldn't have kids in those towns because the jobs weren't there. The number one, just to jump in on that, I had a friend in the Cilento that so many people from that part of Salerno, when COVID happened, who were working in Germany, working in France, they went back, right? And they wanted to be back. And they were back with their friends, and they were back with their families. And one guy said to me, I could have worked remotely if the Wi-Fi and the internet had been better here. And they just couldn't upgrade our internet. And he wound up going back to, I think he was in Holland or Germany, whoever he worked for. And the thing is, that kind of frustration in Italy, why can't you just fix the internet? I want to work from home here. And that's why I think it's easy.
It's an interesting point. Now to sort of wrap up this amazing conversation, because we're talking about the work of Italian American playwrights, right? We're talking about the telling of our story. We're talking about some of this theater in dialects or pigeons of dialects, mixed dialects we call Lumanti Italian. All these southern dialects mixed, and like the Yiddish theater. What do you do? Because we don't have the population here that can understand these. So you could translate them, whatever. But we also talk all the time on this show about that dichotomy between Italians that stayed and Italians that left, and the classism and this and that and the other. What a great project it would be to produce some of these plays in Italy where they could be understood and could be.
You could do that.
I mean, you're really putting your neck out there in some way.
We take on these massive
What
projects.
an evangelical project to say to, it's a great way to explore both sides.
I wonder if they would understand the perspective of being Italian American, because in my experience, they don't. The Italians don't. They look down their noses at Italian Americans, and
not all of them.
No.
The reason I get beat up in comments, I had so much aggravation last Friday night because now we started this to get our numbers up because we want to be evangelical. Like, comment. So we comment, and then 10,000 Italians in Italy beat us. I mean, they just smack us around. But I have to say, a lot of them are from parts of Italy, northern Italy, that don't like southern people to begin with.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
so-
just a fact. I don't want to hurt anybody's
No,
feelings.
that's true.
And we've had some people, listeners, beloved listeners, who are offended by that. But I asked them where they're from. So after they beat me up, I engaged them because I'm a sicko. Smart people wouldn't do that. And it's always northern Italy. And it's always in northern. And some southern person commented and said, they don't like us, and that's why they don't like you. So it's not, their dislike is just for southern people in general. And that's not everybody, but that's kind of prevalent up there.
It's a major strain in
It's a
how
major
this
strain.
relationship has developed. And you were talking about the depopulation of these villages and places in Italy. What a better time to have Somalian refugees and Albanian refugees come in and do the work that you need to do in your country. Because who's going to do that work in Italy? You know, this anti-immigrant thing in Italy is, it doesn't make sense given the fact that they have become depopulated because they're not having babies.
Yeah, it really compounds the situation around
So
immigration.
what's going to happen to that place? It's going to be a museum.
Yeah.
You'll go to Florence and, you'll see the Uffizi Gallery.
If we put you on Instagram, we're going to have 8 million comments.
Yeah.
They come out of, you got to see, they're going to come out of the woodwork. How dare this American speak about Italy?
I don't have a problem encountering.
It doesn't matter anything
that
you could say.
business.
You could have said, I like my cappuccino with 2 sugars. How dare this American tell us to put 2 sugars when the only traditionally it is the 1 sugar because Americans are obsessed with the sugar and that's why you all have a,
To be fair to our Italian cousins, that's everywhere in the world now. Everybody behind the safety of a keyboard, yes.
Not like
Yes,
Italy.
I think
they
it's
have
everywhere.
the gold star. Whenever they do something, they're the best. They're the best in the kitchen.
I don't know.
They're the best in the music conservatory.
I
they're
think-
the best in the beat you up character.
I think we have. I think
They don't have the best.
Irish people. I could say this.
They don't have the best rock and roll.
no, nobody beats us
No,
there.
I mean that was
Italy.
Sure. I mean
Who's better rock and roll, us or the British?
Oh, we're together.
You traitor.
We're
No,
together.
I'm curious. I really
It's
am.
How
back
could you
and forth.
say
Back and
that?
forth. A lot
That
of
was
rock
right
and roll
down
is
here
British.
in the
Come on.
Bowery in 1780. When did they evacuate from here?
I love how you could live in a historical.
How could you say the British?
They were
Well,
great
listen,
at rock and roll.
but they were.
They,
But they were.
percentage wise, 30%.
Come on, that's not
20%.
fair. No.
The whole British thing, they were using American blues as their foundation.
Yeah, sure.
Where did American blues come from? Well, it came from slavery, right?
Yeah.
That's where it came from. It came from work songs. It came from worship music, right?
I can't believe you're saying the British are better rock and roll
I
than the
said,
Americans.
who is better?
I
That was my.
I don't even think that's a question.
I don't know. I think
There
they've
is
done
that
a lot.
Celtic thing.
Yeah.
Irish musicians.
I was
There's
gonna
something
say,
going on
yeah.
with that is almost like supernatural.
I mean, if you go to the South, the American South, you hear Irish music all over.
Oh
I mean,
my God.
they don't hear,
think,
but I can
think
pick
about
it up.
all that, all of the stuff from the Carter family, and I mean, a lot of that is
the
Scotch,
fiddle and all
Irish.
that
Yeah,
stuff.
come
How
on.
did we get Irish fiddles
I don't know.
from an
Irish
Italian
fiddles. It's good
theater?
music. Fiddles and everything.
Well,
can't
WFUV
believe-
Sunday mornings Celtic music.
Yeah,
for
That's right.
5 hours.
Yeah, that's right.
Troll Nagale.
Good old
I
Fordham.
like it.
Nagale.
No one else wants to listen to it.
I
but
like
me.
it. I like Irish music. Although I'll say Fordham.
I could do a whole.
One
My
thing about
cousin used to
Fordham.
be the DJ on Kill Nagale.
Is that right?
I
love
could do
that show.
Yeah, we've gotten people. If you're still listening by now, you deserve
Yeah,
a call.
you're
We're
hanging
going
out.
off- We're not going off on tangents.
Now we're really far, but
This was by far the most tangential conversation.
That's
we've
because
ever
I'm
had.
involved. And I love the Irish people, and I just want to say that again.
Well, the
Yeah.
Irish people are theater people.
They're my people,
They're
too.
people of a book.
yeah.
I mean, they're much more. Italians are like, what are we going to eat? The Irish are a theater. They're a bookish people.
Strong oral tradition.
Yeah.
Strong oral
That's why
tradition.
they didn't make good mobsters, because they talk too much.
Well, you know,
That's
like the
very true.
last Irish language monolingual speaker was a guy named Sean Henry, which was from Mayo. My father's born and raised in Mayo. And he's the last guy who couldn't speak English. He died in 1998.
No kidding.
And Sean Henry is on YouTube, and you can listen to him like the Odyssey and the Iliad. He had memorized.
Oh, my God.
So he was a storyteller. So he would memorize these Gaelic language. I don't even know, what would you call the Odyssey and the Iliad?
They're epics.
Epics.
Epics. He would memorize these epics, and he died in 98. And but I mean, Ireland was really good at preserving stuff. Like Ireland went above and beyond, and there was no concept like, well, that's a dialect or that's a rural thing. But yeah, that's a different. I don't see that. I don't know of anybody in Italy who, maybe there were. We don't know. We always find new stuff out here. Was there anybody who like recited epics?
Sure, there's a lot of Sicilian epic poetry and stuff like that.
I didn't
So
know
I
that.
didn't even
Yeah.
realize that.
There's a lot of it. I mean, again, it doesn't get the attention, and we
When would that have ended? that tradition. I mean, Ireland that died with him. In 1998, Sean Henry died.
I
mean,
know-
people have tried it,
People
but
still
it's
do
not.
a lot of these Sicilian long form poems and stuff. I mean, the guys from Arbisicola are great about that. That's who we should talk to. They've done a great
That
job.
probably stuck around because you're the Greek. I mean, Neapolitans were Greek as well, but
Yeah.
They were all Greek.
Yeah,
they're
they
all
were all
Greek.
they were all Greek.
Syracuse.
Yeah.
Syracuse.
I saw an article the other day about it was it Paestum? It said Paestum, the best Greek site in the world, or something like that.
yeah, Pace. I mean, the best.
But that was Greece, really. To the Greeks, it was Greece, right? It was
To
not.
Greece, it was,
It was
very
Magna
much
Graecia,
Greece.
Greater Greece.
Greater Greece was Greece. They weren't differentiating.
I wonder, I'm curious about people who, in the oral tradition, recite epic poetry in Sicilian.
Let's work on
various
it. We will
dialects.
hook you up with
Like
the
what
guys from
poems are they reciting?
Arbisicola.
Are they reciting the Odyssey and the Iliad?
No, I think that these are some of the medieval works, if I remember correctly. But again, I'm testing, so don't hold me to this. But we can get our friends from Arbisicola around.
You know, I was
this
thinking
and-
this morning, get them on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, sometimes you can read my mind.
Let's bring them. We'll all hang out together. Come co-host with us because you've been a lot of fun and.
Oh, it's been great to
It's
be
a
here.
great
Really
honor
great
to
to
have
be
you on.
together,
It's
yeah.
a great
It's an honor
honor
to be
for the
here.
people of the Belmont Italian American Theater. I know there's other people out there who maybe we don't know who they
Maybe
are, but
we'll
you
hear
did
from
great.
them.
I hope
Yeah, how
so.
can they? How can our audience find you
They
and
can
your
put
work?
on Akumata. I'll get you the script.
Let's do that. We should do that all together. That'd be fun.
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not really on social media.
What about your work?
Oh,
Like, where can they buy this?
oh,
Amazon?
yeah, I guess. That
Not-
was published by Doubleday.
Okay. Not so sweet. These 2 of your plays are in here, you said.
Two of them, it's an anthology, and I have 2 plays in it. Yeah, I guess go to Amazon.
All right. We want to encourage everybody to go out and see. You never know who's out there looking for stuff to produce. And
These are
this
the
is-
moments when
yeah.
we are the Italian American PBS.
That's absolutely right. And hopefully we if you know of anything out there, works, scripts, you're a playwright, let's start compiling this stuff because if it's not in Minnesota, it should be somewhere. And this is a great part of our story. So I would relish your return, John. And
I'd love to come back.
Yeah, we would really
It's been very
enjoy it.
interesting. I learned a lot today.
Wow.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Likewise.
so did we. Absolutely. That means a lot. So hopefully everybody out there learned a lot today. Give us a buzz, give us a comment, send us an email. Let us know what you thought of the episode. And also if you can contribute to this continuing conversation about our culture, our history, and our story being represented on stage and elsewhere. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See that you're born an Italian. If you want your life to be great, see that you're born an Italiano, and your life will be great. See that you're born an Italiano.